Texas Governor Greg Abbott is unveiling his plan to build a new wall along the state's border with Mexico. During a news conference in Austin on Wednesday, the Republican governor approved $250 million to cover the first stage of the project. Donations from across the country will also be used to fund the wall. It comes just one day after congressional investigators ruled that President Biden's decision to freeze funding for the border wall was legal. Mr. Biden signed a proclamation on his first day in office, pausing border wall projects and restricting funds for new construction. CBS News' Mireya Villarreal joins me now from inside the Texas State Capitol in Austin. Hi there, Mireya. Thanks very much for being with us. So how do Governor Abbott's plans for Texas's border wall relate to the federal government's plans?
Hey, Elaine, thanks for having me tonight. I think that this is a really interesting kind of play in the situation when it comes to what we are seeing along the border. Obviously, everybody is very focused on the influx of migrants that we have seen crossing into the U.S., and this is Governor Abbott's way of trying to help the situation. At least that's what he said in today's press conference. What we've seen from the federal government so far is a pullback of funds specifically. Right as Trump was leaving office, he took $2.2 million from the military out of the Pentagon and gave it to border wall infrastructure and building the border wall. That money was put on hold by President Biden while he investigated exactly how the funds were being used. And as of right now, he took that money and gave it back to the Pentagon. So it's very clear that the Biden administration has no intention of moving forward just yet with continuing to build the border wall. That is a stark contrast to what we heard today from Governor Abbott, who says that we need to build this infrastructure and that he has put a $250 million down payment on building the wall. But just to make very clear, the plans are still very unknown at this time as to how the wall exactly will get built.
And Mireya, this is not the first attempt to crowdfund a border wall. Remind us, what happened with the last one?
So a few years ago, we saw a private nonprofit come out. It was called We Build the Wall. It had a couple of very well-known conservative leaders that were in charge of this nonprofit organization. They actually raised $25 million to build a private wall along the Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, even California areas. They started with a piece of land that was down in South Texas along the Rio Grande River. We were able to go by it and see it as it was just starting construction. Since then, a very small portion of that wall, I think we saw about 2 to 3 miles that was built in that area. That construction stopped. It didn't go very far. It didn't connect to any of the federal wall that was already in place. And there has definitely been a dissolution of that particular nonprofit organization. Several of its leaders have been actually indicted for using funds improperly for this nonprofit organization. And the wall itself took a huge hit when Hurricane Hannah came through into Texas and definitely kind of eroded some of the gravel on that private wall. The issue and the concern was that you had a company come in, a contractor come in that didn't know exactly what they were doing and how to build a border wall, especially on this particular part of Texas, and it wasn't built properly. So it was stopped. So the issue with building these private border walls is that you obviously have the federal government. It takes them years to put these plans together. There are a lot of studies that go into place that are done beforehand, and then you have to talk about actually getting a hold of the land in order to do these projects. And so it is a very long process. When you look at what Governor Abbott is proposing, it's difficult to see how this will move forward and how quickly it will move forward.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, Mireya, given all of those complications that you just laid out and the difficulties with planning and getting land. How plausible is this latest plan by Governor Abbott?
You know, I think the frustration that we are seeing right now, especially from people that are living along the border, is they feel like there are other issues at hand that we should be tackling. For example, the power grid and making sure that that is in order and that has the money to obviously fix and make sure that we don't have what we saw just a few months ago here in Texas, a grid that it fails and fails so badly. And so I think what we are seeing is a lot of people calling this political theater. We asked that of Governor Abbott today. He says he feels very strongly that Texans right now, Texans are the ones that are feeling the humanitarian crisis. And so for him, he wants to move forward. But he did own up to the fact that right now, the first step that they have taken is to put that $250 million aside. But the first thing they're going to do is hire a project manager. And then that manager will start with the research, will start with the surveys, will start with hiring contractors, and then maybe talk about the cost of what it might be for a mile of this wall. When we were talking to Border Patrol agents over the last 4 years, one quote was 1 mile of wall was $27 million. And so it's clear right now that I think there's still a lot of unknowns with this, but they are putting together a task force. They definitely want to move forward with this. And so it's definitely a wait-and-see situation here in Texas.
So one thing we do know is that former President Trump is planning to join Governor Abbott on a trip to the southern border on June 30th. Have they announced any sort of agenda, Mireya?
As of right now, they're keeping that kind of quiet. We obviously did see that President Trump has taken the invite that was given to him by Governor Abbott. I think he's going to come down here. I mean, the two areas that they're talking a lot about is Del Rio, where we have seen a lot of activity of border crossings right now, and also South Texas. President Trump visited South Texas several times, and that's also where we saw a lot of new wall being built over his last 4 years in administration. I think he's very comfortable in that area. We've seen him go there, sign proclamations. Obviously, he has a lot of support in that region. So I could definitely see him going back to both of those locations. I think it's all going to be dependent right now on where Governor Abbott and his group are seeing the most interest from landowners and also the most support from law enforcement. But those are the two main areas. I would imagine they're going to tour the location. They might even get into some of these facilities that are housing some of the migrants. So it'll be very interesting to see exactly what he will lay out. So a lot to possibly see, but still no absolute plans just yet.
All right, Mireya Villarreal, it's great to have you on Red and Blue. I don't get to talk to you very often. Thank you so much, Mireya.
Thanks, Elaine.